How's it going, guys? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Phil Talk Sports Podcast. Got a really special one for you today. College football started last week with week 0. Now everybody gets to join the party, and we are going to preview UCF's 2024 season. Myself and my good friend Blake Blahut. We've been to a lot of games, over the years together, and we always chat about games. We run into each other at events, and seems like a good person to have on. So I appreciate you being here, Blake.
Awesome. Thank you. I really appreciate the invite. And anytime there's an opportunity to talk UCF football, UCF in general, I'm always game for that. So thank you for the invite.
Of course, man. Yeah, Blake's a proud alumni. He's a member of Kingdom NIL, such as myself, and he's also a member of One Realty Group. So if you're buying or selling in the greater Orlando area, Blake is your man for that. So
Appreciate that.
Of course, man. Of course. So yeah, football. We're about, by the time you guys hear this, we're going to be about 48 hours away from UCF's first game, which me and Blake have figured out we are both going to be at. So we'll probably meet up at some point for that. First game is against New Hampshire. Nothing huge to write home about, but I always enjoy, getting out of there as early as I can during the season. I usually don't make the midweek games. My schedule aligned perfectly to actually be out there. So I'm pretty happy about that. Before we touch on UCF, we're going to dig through their whole schedule. We got really lucky. They posted the first depth chart today, so we're going to dig into that a little bit. But, week 0 came and gone, really highlighted by that game in Ireland between Georgia Tech and Florida State. Georgia Tech getting the upset. I know you were on vacation, but you caught a little bit of that game. I can't say – so on the last episode I mentioned if I was going to bet, I would have picked Florida State to win, but I would have not have picked the points. Like I would have taken Georgia Tech in the points, so that would have worked out for me because they won last minute. But what do you think was it's still viewed as an upset, even though Georgia Tech's better than people think. What do you think was the demise of Florida State in that game?
Honestly, they just couldn't make too many big plays on offense. I know they had one really big one in the first or second quarter, I think it was. I mean, I kind of caught most of the highlights. I watched the last bit of it, but it seemed like they just really couldn't push the ball down the field very effectively, at least in the way that they were last year. It seemed like every game they were guaranteed 30 or more points, with the exception of the last couple games there. But I think that their defense was almost on point the whole game, really, when you think about it. I mean, if you hold an opponent, especially like Georgia Tech, who I think, like you were saying, their offense is overlooked, and I think they're going to surprise a lot of people this year. Their defense really kept them in that game. I think their offense just didn't really click.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they started that game. They came right out and scored, hit the swinging gate for the 2-point conversion. It's like, oh, they're off and running. And then from what I could see, they obviously wanted, if they would have known that they were going to have a transfer quarterback in this year, they would have liked their first game to be against a New Hampshire or whatever. They didn't have that luxury this year. Big game, only game, really worth watching in week 0 in Ireland. Big deal. It's basically a bowl game atmosphere to kick off your season. And I feel like they were just trying to let DJ have to do the bare minimum and still win. He really didn't throw in the first half. He averaged -1 yard per pass completion. Basically, everything was screens. Everything was behind the line. It was ridiculous. And you really didn't see him push the ball until they had no other choice in that fourth quarter. Underthrew a few of them, but he hit on a few too. He kind of got them back in the game. When Georgia Tech got the ball last, though, they're like, we're going to bleed this 4 minutes, and we're not going to even let them have another opportunity. So really, it really brings me back, and you're someone that would understand this, when UCF played in Ireland about 10 years ago now, and, we made the switch at quarterback at halftime. And you can only think wow, if Justin Holman played that whole game, maybe we win in Ireland. And you almost think if you let DJ kind of let loose a little bit, you'd like to think they score more points at least and have a much better chance of winning it. So I think they put him on too short of a leash for too long, and then it was too late after that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I can kind of get the same sense of that. And I have a feeling that, they're still going to be a contender in the ACC. Even, I don't think that one game is just going to really, push their whole season down, so to speak. But I did kind of get the sense that DJ wasn't playing at his full capability. And again, maybe he just needed another game before going up a prime opponent. And again, I'm going to consider Georgia Tech a prime opponent for the ACC, just because they very well could make the conference championship game this year. But again, I think I agree with you that I think that DJ just didn't have maybe the opportunity to kind of get in tune with his team before going into a big game like that.
Yeah, and you mentioned, being players for the ACC. Everyone's going to talk Florida State and Clemson. Miami has hype this year, but what else is new? They always tend to have hype for one reason or another, whether it's warranted or not. This year it might be because they look like they might have all the pieces. But aside from those three, like I'd put Georgia Tech as the fourth team right now, and we haven't seen the others play. So I definitely agree that they could, make some noise in the ACC. And we ran into them at the wrong time last year too. We saw how good they can be, and like they have a fifth-year quarterback, a lot of seniors, a lot of like experience on that team. So that might be the difference for sure. But fun way to start the year. Really, again, the only game worth watching, unless you wanted to see SMU almost blow it against Nevada, which had a little bit of fun to it. But other than that, really the only game worth watching. It reminds me of like when Scott Frost in Nebraska a couple years ago played and lost to Northwestern. It was a bad loss, but it was magnified that everybody watched that game because it was the only college football game on. So hopefully, like I'm not a big. I don't cheer for the Gators. I don't cheer for the Hurricanes, but like I have some soft spot for Florida State. I have plenty of Seminole friends and everything. So like I do hope they right the ship, but that's definitely stubbing your toe out the gate if you're them.
Oh yeah, no, for sure.
So yeah, just a little recap there of week 0. We're gonna the rest of this episode we're gonna talk UCF Knights. Like I said, about 48 hours from the time you guys hear this, we'll be kicking off on a Thursday night game, weather permitting. Hopefully, no delays or anything like we've had the last couple years. But before we get to what's on the field, we want to quickly cover the biggest offseason thing that I would say for UCF, and that is the newest member of the UCF Hall of Fame is going to be none other than former linebacker Shaquem Griffin. He got the announcement at the kickoff luncheon this year. He thought he was just coming there to speak, and Terry Mahadra kind of blindsided him there at the end. And it was just a great video to see. The emotions were running high. And like, while it's not a surprise he's getting in, I enjoy the fact that people are getting in like while they don't have to wait 10, 15 years to get in. He's been away from the program for what, 6, 7 years at this point. And I think you can even you don't want to do it too quickly. You want them to be able to digest their career and stuff. Like somebody like Latavius Murray that's still in the league. Like I'd love to see him get in a couple of years, but since he's still active, I understand not. But that was a good surprise for all of us, incredibly well deserved. And I don't know when they're gonna do all that sort of stuff, but maybe they'll honor him at halftime at one of these games. But just a great way to kick off the year with the vibes there.
Yeah, when I saw the video of Shaquem just so completely blindsided by the announcement from Terry that he'd be inducted into the UCF Hall of Fame, I was really happy. I honestly wasn't expecting that either. But when I saw that he just again was completely blindsided by the announcement, I like that the UCF athletics really likes to recognize people that don't necessarily just make an impact on the field, but also outside of it as well.
Mhm.
Because I know Shaquem is involved in a lot of organizations and charities that just have really meaningful work just outside of the game of football. So he is one of the most deserving people that there is to get the honor of being in the UCF Hall of Fame.
Definitely. Like I just think it's more of out of the box way of thinking with the Hall of Fame lately. You got Shaquem, who's only a few years removed. Last year, to me, the thing that I was super happy about is like Mark Daniels being active but getting in, like as he's still the voice of UCF. Like why wait 10 years? Like the guy's getting in anyway. So the
Yeah.
fact that he can enjoy it kind of at the prime of his career, I think is awesome. So I think we'll get more of that. We got Blake in a couple years ago, Josh Sitton, and we're gonna this next wave of like after that run that like softball had and stuff, like we're just gonna have a lot of it's gonna mean more to us because it was the people that were there when we were students, so it's gonna mean a little more to us than maybe others. But I'm glad we only have to wait 3 or 4 years for that and not like a whole decade for people like that to be recognized.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think there's going to be a huge wave of deserving people that are going to be coming up, and not just from football, but also just like in Olympic sports as well.
Yeah, definitely. And like the class is typically, I don't know, 5, 6 people. So I'm interested to see, who it's going to be for the remainder of this year. But we're going to get into the football season now. Like you said, about 48 hours away from kickoff on that Thursday night against New Hampshire. Big difference in roster this year. Like there's going to be some familiar faces, but I'd say over half the team, or pretty close to it, is turnover. Some of that was out of necessity. Some of it was trying to upgrade at positions. And I think when it starts with that, you got to think of the quarterback and you got to think KJ Jefferson. There was a point early in the offseason we thought it was going to be a different quarterback at the helm. He chose somewhere else. I don't want to say that this is like the backup plan, but it's a pretty good one when you get someone with SEC experience. He's gone into the swamp and beaten the Gators. He won big road games for the SEC. And they either came close to beating Bama or did. big games against Texas A&M and stuff. So KJ's battle tested, and I'm really excited to see how he looks in a nice uniform.
Yeah, KJ Jefferson, I really like that he has that SEC experience because let's be real, the grind of the SEC conference schedule, you really can't compare it, to playing, in from other conferences. So I really think that his experience in the SEC is only going to benefit him. No offense to Big 12 defenses, but I feel like Big 12 defenses just most of them more often than not aren't quite as physical as what you see in the SEC. And so I do think that KJ Jefferson, assuming he's healthy and he's clicking most nights, he's probably going to have a big year for us.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen our team, other teams, or like they get the big transfer quarterback, and you're like, this guy's going to be the answer to all of our problems. And for one reason or another, it just doesn't work out. So, like, we've seen it both ways. We've seen the perfect transfer, like the Joe Burrow types, where they end up right where they need to be at the right time to just have like a great season, even if it's just one season with their other team. So, obviously, that's what we're hoping for. And then while we're talking quarterbacks, though, the other transfer, Ja'Cory Brown, like it's interesting. I don't want to go too far to say it's like he's the quarterback of the future, but he definitely has a shot at it. So it's like I'm interested to see how much does he play. Is there sort of like we get a package going for him to keep him engaged and involved? Because in this new era of college football, it doesn't matter who you have. If they're not happy, like they're gone anyway. So like you try to make a plan and it doesn't work out. So it's like Gus has already said plenty with like KJ. Like when I see him, I see Cam Newton, and like it's easy to make that comparison as far as the build and the play style and everything. So while I think this is definitely KJ's team this year, I'm under the impression they're going to try and get Ja'Cory like play as often as possible. That's how it seems to me.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm not sure how many games he played last year, or if he's still eligible to take a red shirt, or maybe if they play just right, he plays 4 games this year and then can take a red shirt and save that year of eligibility. I know that I've seen some highlights from him, and of course, I know the highlights don't tell the whole story, but
Yeah.
he seems like he kind of, and I don't want to make a crazy comparison by any means, but he kind of has very similar play style as Mackenzie Milton. Really, I
Mhm.
mean, he can move around, he can make plays downfield. He kind of turns nothing into something types of plays. So I really hope that we can just kind of continue to develop him and that he finds a home at UCF. And then hopefully he's in the best spot possible to be the starting quarterback in 2025. Because honestly, I feel like that would be the best case scenario as opposed to having to dip back into the portal and the quarterback trying to develop new camaraderie with the receivers and whatnot. So I really hope that Ja'Cory Brown he is the quarterback of the future. But of course, we'll see if he stays happy and wants to stay at UCF after a year.
Yeah, I mean that's always there wasn't that long ago. It was Tommy Castellanos was the future, right? And now he's the future at Boston College. We talked Florida State a little bit ago. They play them in their next game, so the schedule doesn't really get any easier if you're the Knowles moving forward. But it's the same. Like yeah, there are times where you need to dip into the portal, but then at some point or another you have to build your own guys to some extent. Like just even having JRP for 2 full years, even though we get with injuries in there, it was a nice change of pace to like we know who the guy is if he's healthy, he's our guy. And now we have two mobile quarterbacks, but to me, they're two different types of mobile. Like you wouldn't run the exact same plays with the two of those guys. So it's not like, oh, KJ's out, Ja'Cory's in. It's going to be the exact same thing. But it is the funny thing with like, I wanted to see both these guys play even in just like the spring game, but the way our spring games work now, they're like, you get even less out of a spring game than you used to. It's literally just enough to see guys run around in the uniform for the first time of the year. So like I've seen nothing with these guys, especially like being mobile quarterbacks. You're not gonna tackle them, so you don't really know what you're looking at in those games for sure. But yeah, I'm interested with two of them. After that, it kind of gets murky. Like I know we have other quarterbacks that have had good tape and have great careers coming out of high school. Like EJ Colson is one of them, but like I don't know what to make any of those guys yet. So for this year, I think we're really just looking at these two.
No, no, for sure. I honestly, I'd be surprised unless there's an injury, God forbid. We're probably only going to see these two guys play. I think that because everybody else, they're eligible to have a red shirt. So I would imagine that Gus would like to preserve that and then just, have them get some practice in the spring and probably be in a good position to compete for the starting job in 2025.
Yeah, I mean, unless you have just a true blowout on either end, one of those guys might sneak into like one game at the most. But yeah, I don't think I don't think any of those guys are in danger of burning their red shirt, kind of to your point for this. But when you talk this offense, like KJ, we're looking forward to him, but like it starts and ends with RJ Harvey. You know, they just dropped that. I don't know if you got a chance to watch it yet. That like biopic, I guess I'll call it, the documentary, the hometown hero RJ Harvey. I'm about 75% of the way through it. I gotta finish it off here probably this evening. But you know, like he's the guy. But like if he's Batman, like he's got his Robin already too, and might be closer to like a Nightwing. Like it's not even a sidekick. It's just we got a whole nother Batman in the backfield now with Penny Boone transferring over, I believe, from Toledo. 1,500 yards, 15 touchdowns last year. Like this is a true bona fide starter that if like now if RJ's not in the game, like you don't miss a click, you know, in theory. So like as excited as we are for RJ Harvey this year, like I'm just as excited to see what Penny Boone can do in this offense.
Oh yeah, no, Penny Boone, and I admit that I haven't really had a chance to like watch any highlights from him, but I look at the stats, and obviously they're eye popping stats, they're video game numbers, really, for what he did at Toledo, and I think he was the number one rusher in the MAC conference, some good old MACtion.
Yep.
Uh, 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 he is set up to have a really big year as well. I would not be surprised, and I don't want to jinx it, but I would not be surprised if we had two running backs that exceeded 1,000 rushing yards this season. If Gus's offense clicks the way that he probably has it, drawn up, I'm sure that Penny Boone is going to get a very strong, heavy dose of carries, especially like maybe towards certain portions of the game and rest up Harvey. But I wouldn't be surprised if those guys are going to average between 15 and 20 plus carries a game each. Maybe Harvey with a couple more average per game, but I think Penny Boone is going to be right there, and he very well could surprise a lot of people too. Even though we're talking about him, but I think he might surprise people in the Big 12 that just aren't familiar with him yet.
Yeah, like if they're gonna be familiar with anyone, it's gonna be RJ. So it's like, oh, who's this other guy back here? And that's not even counting, Miles Montgomery and the senior Johnny Richardson, which I will take every opportunity to talk about Johnny Richardson and like his explosive speed. And in a world where people transfer all the time, that guy could have left 3 years ago and been the centerpiece of another offense, and he's chose to stay as a returner, third down back. Like his speed is next level. That being said, nobody gets tackled at the one more than Johnny Richardson. Like the few touches he gets, it's like, oh, he's finally going to score a touchdown. Oh, and he's down at the one, and then someone else will go in. So like you're talking about, two guys far and away, and then you got Miles Montgomery and Johnny Richardson. So backfield wise, like I think we're set pretty well to do a couple different things. And to see like a moniker from baseball, like I would almost look at this running back room like a pitching rotation. Like you have your starter, you have your middle relievers to eat up some innings, and then a guy to come in and close it for you. So I think if you use them all properly, like you mentioned the 2,000-yard receiver rushers, which I think is totally possible. It's very difficult to do, but it's more possible this year than it's been in any years recently, I would think. And it's going to be really exciting to watch.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. And Johnny Richardson, like you were saying, like I love that guy just because
Yeah.
like he's very similar to Adrian Killens, very similar kind of just like play style. You can just find a way to get him in space and he's gone. There's not no one's gonna catch him. I'm sure that he's gonna get his fair share of touches as well. Especially considering that Gus Malzahn is a very like run first type of guy, a lot of RPOs and so dare I say, it's almost kind of like a five-headed monster, really, when you think about it, because you have five guys, and the fifth guy is, obviously KJ Jefferson, because you have
Yeah.
he's very mobile. So it's almost just like no matter who you have behind or right next to KJ, and then KJ right there, it's just like, man, if they run it, like they're gonna give people a lot of challenges.
Yeah, I agree. I think you can come at someone a bunch of different ways. And even more importantly, it's like, all right, we had this plan. It's not working today. Like we can go a whole another route at the drop of a hat, which is something worth like a couple games last year. We came out strong, but didn't know how to like carry the momentum. Like the thing we were doing was finally starting to get stopped, and we didn't have a second pitch, another baseball reference, a second gear, whatever you want to call it. So then we're gonna have a lot of gears this year, on the ground for sure with the quarterback as well. But let's talk receivers because we actually got a little bit of news to me going into the year, and I'm excited to see on Thursday night. We think we have our answer right now. We know who the top two receivers are in this offense. We got Kobe Hudson and Xavier Townsend. My big question is like, who's going to stand out as the number 3 receiver. Last year it was easy because you had Baker, you had Hudson, you had Xavier. They were jersey numbered 1, 2, and 3. You knew who the receivers were going to be, right? So looking at the depth chart that was dropped today, they have the redshirt senior Trent Whitmore transferred from Florida. His dad played here back in the day. While I do think he's going to start in the slot, if you will, for this game, to me that's more of a like seniority thing. Like this guy knows the playbook and he's not going to be surprised by anything he sees. He might not be the starter all the way through, but I could see him for the first couple games getting there. But I'm interested to see who gets that third receiver spot and holds on to it.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a guy that no one has really talked about a whole lot, and honestly, Magwood.
Yeah.
Um, he has a little bit of experience. I admit that I'm not sure where he had played previously, but I'm pretty sure he was a transfer.
Mm-hmm.
I know that in the spring game he had made a couple plays, and I know, like you were saying, the spring game is like even more smaller of a sample size than what to expect. But I wouldn't be surprised that you see a lot of targets going to Trent and then Chauncey, just behind Kobe and X. X, of course, can be kind of almost kind of like a Ryan O'Keefe in a way. There's going to be a couple like jet sweeps and stuff with him, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Magwood get more targets than people think.
Yeah, like I think looking at it, if it's any indication, I don't know how much college football 25 you've been playing, but he was slotted into number 3 on our roster, and he's like lethal in the game. So if any of that transfers over to the real field, like I'll be all for it. And you were right about him being a transfer. He came from Kentucky, so another guy with some SEC experience for sure. So that's like he'd be the leader in the clubhouse to be the official like number 3 by the time we get to, let's say, like the conference schedule. But I think Whitmore there to start the year is probably a good call. And again, just a guy that's worked hard since he's been here, deserves the playing time he's going to get early on, and he's either going to play well enough to keep it, or someone's going to take it from him. And I think that's a fair way to do it.
Yeah, and just like the running back room, I mean, we are stacked at wide receiver. Obviously, I'm biased, but when I look at, I'm literally looking at the depth chart right now, and it just has so much experience, but also has some younger guys that just have so much potential. So if there's a guy that if they think like, hey, you know what, they could probably get a little bit more production out of that particular spot and on offense, there's probably 2 or 3 other guys that are capable of outperforming, one or the other. So. I'm not concerned at wide receiver at all, but I'm excited to see what Magwood does because I do believe that he is a guy that could potentially surprise people. I think that he's probably going to, have like maybe like a 500-600 yard reception kind of year, which might not sound like a whole lot, but I think that's more than what people are expecting. And then who knows, with Hudson, maybe possibly going to the league next year, maybe with it. I believe he has at least one more year of eligibility after this.
Yeah, he's got 2 counting this year.
Even better. I love that.
Yep.
Very well could be one of those next guys up, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely. That was going to be my next point is like he has this year to really equate himself, and maybe in 25, like he's the guy, with Townsend, maybe it's the 2 of them at that point. The other thing we're really interested in, this is like something I've noticed other people talk about, other Knights fans that I've had to like look up and research. We love Alex Holler. He got the catches he could in his career, but like the tight end wasn't prominently featured a lot. We had, obviously he had his moments because he was just, a playmaking son of a gun, that guy. But the tight end wasn't really featured in this Gus Malzahn offense. And for one reason or another, I can't confirm nor deny this, but that's supposed to change this year. And that's going to be with sophomore tight end Randy Pittman Jr., 6'2", 225. Really a lot of raving about him. So I'm interested to see how the tight end fits into this. And you mentioned already, like with all the, Gus likes to run the ball. We have the guys to do it this year. I'm curious how many balls there's going to be to go around in the passing game to see, who's going to really be able to stand out and get those, 500-600 yard, maybe 1,000-yard receiver. It may be hard to get 1,000-yard receiver this year, just the way this offense is going to be set up. That's no knock on any of these guys. They have the talent to do it, absolutely. But I think instead of 1,000-yard receiver, you're going to get like 3 or 4 guys in the 600 to 800 range. I think that's a lot more realistic this year.
Yeah, I agree. I have a feeling that maybe, just maybe, like Hudson, he might have similar production as he did last year, which I think he had just over 900 receiving yards, if I
Right.
recall.
Mm-hmm.
he's knocking on the door to that 1,000-yard receiving season. I have a feeling that he's probably going to be in a similar spot, and it's not that like he didn't improve at all. It's just that you're going to look at the targets, and it's like, hey, like he didn't, maybe the targets didn't go up a whole lot or whatever. Assuming that he's healthy and plays well, which I suspect that he will when he gets on the field. But I do agree that we're probably going to have just a bunch of receivers that are going to be like in that 400 to like 600 receiving yard category. And,
Mhm.
Hudson, maybe I'm a little biased because I love the guy. I think he's going to do really good, and I think he has the talent to play at the next level. I wouldn't be surprised if he's the outlier that gets like 900-ish, but doesn't quite crack 1,000 like last year.
Yeah, I mean, I would almost put it, to go in the time machine. I think it would have been 2022 when we had Brandon Johnson. He transferred from Auburn, played 1 year here. He had like 700 and something receiving yards, but he had 10 touchdowns. So it's
Yeah.
like that's where he's going to be known. Like he might score a lot. The yards may not necessarily come with it. They might be in the red zone. They might be some screen passes, but like, we're kind of saying the same thing in a different way. I think the ball is going to be spread more. So like more guys are going to be involved. So the numbers at the end of the year, I think you'll be able to see that in the numbers. Like, no, he just distributed, pretty equally amongst his playmakers, which is really all you want.
Yeah, and when you think about it, that just means that your offense is more balanced, that you can get an equal level of productivity out of almost anybody. And I think that those are the types of teams that are just even more dangerous because when corners and safeties like, oh, who are they going to pass it to this play?
Yeah, exactly. Like, what was the when Ohio State won the title years ago with the third string quarterback? They had the saying like, we don't have backups, we just have more starters. So hopefully we're in a similar position here. So that's really the last thing I want to say about the offense. And again, this depth chart coming out today really helped put things into perspective. Looking at the offensive line, which I think we can admit had some growing pains going from the American to the Big 12, as to be expected. That's not something I was overly shocked about. But you look at this offensive line now, left tackle's a senior, left guard's a fifth-year senior, right guard's a redshirt senior, and the right tackle is a redshirt senior. The center is a sophomore. But aside from that, you are surrounded by depth and experience and longevity at that position. So to me, that's going to show me that the offensive line is going to be better from sure experience, guys that have been there before in the trenches. They transferred from other places. They're used to this level of football where last year, there was a bit of a learning curve for that.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, and just a side note about offense, so too is six. We have six fifth-year seniors on offense.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Not all of them are starting, but they're either like they are starting or right behind a guy that's starting. So it shows that we just have a great deal of experience, and two of which of them are on the offensive line. I was a little surprised, but pleasantly surprised. I'm very happy for him to see Paul Rubolt
Mm-hmm.
get that spot. We're like, oh man, how are you going to throw over a guy who's 6'11"? He's been on the team for a while. He probably could have transferred, had other opportunities, I'm sure. But I'm just glad that he's starting. He deserves it. He's been with the program. I believe he was actually a Heupel recruit.
Yes. He's one of 6 Heupel recruits still on the team.
Yep, yep.
Yeah.
So when I saw that, I was just super excited for him. When I went to I did the Kingdom NIL golf tournament. He was actually on the golf course and he was just saying hi to people. Just really cool, nice, genuine guy. So when I saw that he got, the starting nod at the tackle spot there, I was really excited for him. And I do think that our offensive line is definitely more equipped for the Big 12 now, with the experience that we got, and I apologize, I'm drawing a blank of his name, but the guy that transferred from Alabama, Amari Kite, I believe.
Yep, that's
Yep.
him here. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And
6'7", that guy, 318, another big one.
oof, yeah, man, I wouldn't want to go up against these guys in any sport, basketball, football, whatever.
Yeah.
No,
How's your golf game, by the way?
uh, you know, I'm not good, but I have good moments.
There you go. That's all you can hope for. I've golfed exactly one time, and it was fun. I'd go again. I'm not exactly good necessarily, but not at regular golf. I'll mini golf any day. That's a blast. Top golf, love that stuff too. But I've only went golfing once. But again, enjoyable time. But I'm not gonna feel like I'm holding other people up. So I'm not. I don't like doing that, because I don't really know what I'm doing quite yet. But it was a good time. I never really got the appeal of it, but then when I went, I'm at least like, all right, I get why people do this.
No, no. I mean, honestly, man, just spend more time on the golf course. It's fun. That's what it's all about. I mean, I slice the ball all the time, and then of course we play best ball at the tournament, like I just had
Yeah,
mentioned,
yeah.
and I think there's been maybe 2 times where we actually used my ball. So if they give, yeah, like it. So if you're playing best ball, it makes it even more fun. But no, love Top Golf as well. Just a nice social thing. But other than that, again, I'm not good, but I have good moments.
Yeah. Best ball sounds like the way to go. We're in the weeds here for a minute, but now I have to ask this: out of the players that were there, did they play in this as well? Some of the players, or just the other guys?
Yeah, we did, and not to name drop, but we got very lucky. We got paired with Caden Kittler, uh,
Okay,
was our starting center. Really cool guy. I mean, I can't say that enough. And he was really good too. Like he actually, like truth be told, he carried our team
nice.
tournament. But like if we had won the tournament, it probably would have been because of him.
My next question was going to be, did anyone blow you away like with their golf skills? But it sounds like we got our answer already, so that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, Caden Kittler. I can't speak for any of the other guys, but that participate. But Caden Kittler, like he definitely he's been golfing for a while.
Very cool. Great story to have on here for sure. Good to know these guys are enjoying other areas of athletics when they're not on the field.
Oh yeah.
So we'll jump to defense real quick. A lot of juniors and senior, or a lot of juniors on this defense. A few more sophomores popping up here on this roster, but this is another team that added some depth. I'll let you tell me the guys that you kind of have headlined, but for me, it's definitely got to start with transfer from Vanderbilt, the new Mike linebacker, Ethan Barr. Watch some of his highlights, and again, highlights are highlights, but that's someone that I'm really looking forward to what he's going to do in this. And this comes strictly from me playing the video game. But Brendan Marshall, our nickel corner, has really exploded for me in my dynasty mode. So hopefully we get a similar thing with him moving forward. But those are the two guys that I highlight. There was actually one other. Deshaun Pace, also the other linebacker, fifth-year senior. Those are three guys that I really hope to command this thing. We know what the D line is; those are some of the more familiar faces. Lee Hunter. We do have an injury to John Walker. Not season ending. It doesn't sound like, but like we might not get him maybe 3, 4, 5 weeks into the season. So hopefully he makes a speedy recovery because he's someone that people are really excited to see too. But we're going to be without him for a little while. So that's definitely a hit that we didn't expect this early in the year. But otherwise, those are the guys that stand out for me.
Yeah, honestly, you took probably about like 75% of the guys that I was going to talk about as well. And like Deshaun Pace, I think is probably the more exciting one, just because I feel like a lot of defenses are kind of adapting to this kind of hybrid linebacker safety kind of position, and he plays that like really well. And I know that his brother plays up at the next level for my Minnesota Vikings, and he kind
Nice.
in a very similar role, and he's made some big plays for the Vikings already, and so I'm excited to see what he does, just because he's just super athletic, and again, you could put him at safety, you could put him at linebacker, and he's going to make plays for you. And so Ethan Barr, I think that he was also as a much needed piece experience wise, because we lost Morris Brash to the NFL,
Mhm.
who had pick six in this preseason game the other day. So
Yeah, that was awesome.
yeah, so I'm glad to see that he's doing well, and he's going to probably make a roster spot, I would imagine. But so we replaced some talent with some even more experienced talent, which is
Yeah.
something I loved with Ethan Barr, Deshaun Pace, Malachi Lawrence. I'm really excited about him because he we've seen glimpses of him last year where he had I don't know what the total was, but he had some sacks last year, some big time sacks when we needed them. And so I know that he is going to just be very disruptive, and he's going to get into the backfield, and he's going to make even more of a name for himself. So I would have to say Malachi Lawrence, outside of the guys that we already talked about, is someone who's probably going to have a big year.
Yeah, that's definitely a good person to mention too. And like I said, Ethan Barr is the one that I really looking at what he did. But bringing up Morris Brash again, so one of my close friends, he frequents this podcast with me, huge Charger fan. And when they picked him up, I was like, "You guys got one here. Like you're gonna be really happy." And he's like, "You're gonna say that about all your UCF guys." I'm like, "No, I'm serious. Like this guy is a difference maker." And it took 3 weeks into the preseason to prove it. Like, yeah, that's what you can expect from that guy. So definitely look forward to seeing him play for the Chargers this year. Quick thing. Also, so like Quadric Bullard too. He's someone that's played well in a reserve role, really good on special teams. His sophomore year, he blocked 2 punts for touchdowns, and now every time I see him at the Fan Fest, I say, "Hey, you blocking any more punts this year?" He's like, "It's what I do." He said that to me 2 years in a row now. It's what I do. So I'm hoping we see some of that. But that is definitely someone I'm looking forward to. Quick, we'll talk a little bit here on special teams. The returners, they have Townsend listed as both. That's smart enough for me. I could see some other receivers getting into that spot. Maybe some of these other running backs, depending on the usage of Xavier during the regular offensive game. Uh, Kicker and punter are the same. Colton Boomer, Mitch McCarthy. We'll put our honest hats on for a minute. We love Colton Boomer. Really happy he's here. Told him so at the Fan Fest. Struggled a little bit last year. I don't think that's a mean thing to say. Had the amazing kick against Boise State to win the game in Boise on the blue turf. Not an easy feat. But he, to borrow the Ted Lasso line, had a little bit of the yips later in the year. And to bring him the Fan Fest up again, when I saw him, I was like, "Hey, man, you're going to have a great year, and I can't wait to see it." And he looked at me very seriously. He's like, "See, these other people, they don't know, but we know. We know what's about to happen." So you could just tell his demeanor. He's like, he knows he has something to prove, and I'm really excited. We've seen it before. We know he has the talent to do it. Just a matter of whatever was going up, going wrong, whatever was up, hopefully is past him. Because like with kicking, it can be anything. It can be the most minute thing. It can be the holder, the snapper. I used to play long snapper. I know how that operation goes. Like, so I'm really excited to see like the comeback Boomer tour for this year. That's what I'm looking at special teams.
Oh yeah, Colton Boomer, fan favorite. I know that obviously some people might have given him a tough time because of some of the kicks that he didn't make last year, but we know he has the talent, and it could have been a number of like very small things that no fan would understand unless you're like an actual kicker or played football.
Right.
Um, and all it takes, unfortunately, is with the kicking position is that you miss one or two kicks that you feel like you should have had, and it could be very well just be a mental thing.
Yeah.
So maybe he just got in his own head for a little bit, but I do believe that he's gonna come back, and he's gonna make at least like one or two like really great kicks this year, and everybody's gonna forget about 2023 and the kicks that he had missed. So I'm excited for Colton Boomer. I know he's gonna have a great year, and I know we have a Mitch McCarthy back. Which fun fact about him at the Kingdom NIL golf tournament. He was out there punting balls on the on the
Oh, that's
fairway
awesome.
to give you a better position with your ball, and he gave us a good like extra like 40 something yards on a half decent drive, and it really helped us out. Really cool guy. Really tall guy. I didn't realize how tall he was, but man, he was pretty consistent with his punts, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Mitch McCarthy, because I believe he's in his last year of eligibility if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
uh, I wouldn't be surprised to see him at least compete for an opportunity at the next level with just how good he is as a punter.
Yeah, 6'5", definitely tall for a punter. Funny story with him too. Some may or may not know this. If you ever met him, you would know immediately. But he's part of this phenomenon of people from Australia that maybe have like rugby backgrounds coming to the States, getting an education in the States. You might be 30 something, but you have all your eligibility because you didn't originate here. So I know he's a little older than your average college football player. But when I went over to the same table that I talked to Colton at, he was sitting next to him. They had the special teamers together, and it's hard to see here, but I have the custom jersey. I have 83 because that's the number that I wore any years that I played or whatever. So I'm walking up, and I'm gonna not try to butcher like an Australian accent. But as I'm walking up, he's like, 83, who's 83? And I explained, like, it's just a custom number for me. And he's like, oh, because I'm sitting here thinking, I don't think we even have an 83 this year. It was just a funny moment with him. Like you said, great guy. Really just enjoyed meeting him. Gage King as well, the long snapper. This is his second year as a starter. So with that core group intact from last year, I think any snafus, whether it be from Colton or Mitch or whatever, like the more years it's the same guys, snapping and holding for you, it's got to be better, I would think.
Oh yeah, yeah, no, for sure. So I think that just we're gonna see an improvement on special teams as a whole. I know that there was a couple things, obviously, that were talked about in some of Gus Malzahn's post game press conferences. Where they had made some mistakes and things like that. But I have a feeling that as a whole, they're going to be a much better group this year.
Yeah, that's definitely what we look to see here. So that's offense, defense, and special teams in a nutshell. Before we get out of here, we're just going to take a quick glance here at the schedule this Thursday. Like I said, me and Blake will both be out there. For the New Hampshire game at 7 o'clock, followed by that is Sam Houston State. No disrespect to those programs, but if we play the way we're capable of, the Knights should be 2-0 heading into conference play. And then a couple weeks down the line, the last non-conference game is that big matchup against the Gators at the Swamp. Looking forward to that. I won't be at that one. I don't trust myself in Gainesville around that many Gators fans, and I know that about myself. So I'm just going to watch it at home. But I know I think we were talking before we started recording. You'll be out there for that one, won't you?
Yep. I'll be at that one, and I'll be at the TCU game. I'll be traveling to Dallas in a few weeks for that one as well. But the Swamp, honestly, if if I had to rank like a top 10 like important out of conference or just like regular season games, this game would be one of the top 10 in my opinion of this last decade, just because it could literally change the way some people, view UCF. I know we obviously beat, the Gators a few years ago at the Gasparilla Bowl, as some call the Gusparilla Bowl.
Yep.
But that team was, they had a challenge. They didn't have their head coach, and so I really think that it's an opportunity to make a statement win in a very hostile environment. And whether the Gators go 5-7 or 7-5 or 9-3 or whatever their expectations of what they're actually going to do this year, it's a tough place to win. And so no matter how good or bad they are this year, I don't think it's going to be an easy game.
Yeah, I mean, people try to downplay on both sides that this isn't a big game. You're lying. It's a big game on both sides. Gator fans, Gator players, Gator coaches are going to pretend they're too big for this. They did the same thing at the Gusparilla Bowl. We see how that worked out. They had their challenges that year. We had ours. That was before Mikey Keene. That was kind of the Mikey Keene coming out party, really, back then. Someone that we do still wish we had in our locker room, and I'll be cheering him on at Fresno State this year. But you can't pretend this doesn't matter. Now, it doesn't matter in the sense of you win or lose this game, your season's over or continuing. The Knights could lose that game and still make the college football playoff if they win the Big 12, right? So it's like it matters, but it's not the whole season. It's bragging rights, and bragging rights matter. It's one of the few things that college football hasn't ruined over the years with moving of conferences and everything else. So it's a huge deal. I'm looking forward to it. I have the utmost confidence that we have the ability to win for the reasons of that we just talked about and the players that we have. But it is common knowledge that the Gators have one of the toughest schedules ever assembled this year. So it's a matter of like how they are going to respond to what they're dealing with through week 4 or 5 of the season. And if they don't start out hot, it is totally possible that's the last game Billy Napier coaches. If they're 2-4 and then they play us and it doesn't go their way, like that could be it. So that might help them though. If the players do like Billy, they might be playing for his job in that game. You never really know. So like a lot of ifs, a lot of buts, a lot of maybes for the Gators. But to dismiss it on their end, I think is a total sham. Like this is a big deal on both sides.
Yeah, no, and I think that Billy Napier is going to do everything he can to keep them focused on that game, just because well, I mean, also there's a couple of recruits that he lost to UCF, so
Right.
making a statement on the recruitment trail, and this game would only bolster that even more. So I really think that that game, and I'm not like one to really talk about people's jobs, so to say, but I do. If he loses that game, there is a very strong possibility that he is not coaching the Gators that next weekend.
Yeah.
But it is a make or break game. It is going to be one of the most highest rated games that weekend. Maybe not the highest rated, but I think it's going to be like the top 3 or 5 in terms of like TV ratings. If you're one of those people like me that gets geeky about TV ratings and climate and the business side of things like that in college sports, that's going to be huge. So literally people from all over the country are going to be watching that game. And I think that, with UCF, hopefully we pull off the win. I think it will just further elevate the perception of our program.
I agree. And listen, as someone who's also a pro wrestling fan, then that's all people want to talk about is ratings and buy rates and ticket sales. Like, trust me, I pay attention to that stuff too. But what I mean to say is like, if the Gators are 4-1 and they'll lose to UCF, like that doesn't affect Billy's job at all. And more or less is if they're 1-4 or 2-3 or whatever, and then they lose that game, it could be the final nail. So it just depends on how because they got Miami that first week. That's just as big a deal to them. To some, probably bigger, just because like it's a longer standing rivalry. But you mentioned also, away games, you're going to TCU. What made you pick that one? Did that just fit your schedule best, or was that just the one you looked at that looked the most attractive?
So truth be told, I always had a soft spot for TCU just because they're kind of like the little train that could, so to speak, back in the day. Of course, the program's been around for a long time, but not like well, now it's different. But back in the day, they didn't have like a huge fan base.
Hmm.
Took on some of the big boys and won in some big time games. And so when I saw that they were on the schedule, it was very intriguing. But then I also looked at the rest of the schedule, and one of the unique things about the Big 12 is that most of the programs are in small to mid-sized cities that aren't exactly easy to travel to. But
Hmm.
they're in Fort Worth. They're about 30 minutes west of Dallas, so it was actually easy to get to. So I was like, this will probably logistically be the easiest game to
Makes
go
sense.
well. So really two things. The intrigue of the matchup of it being TCU because I feel like TCU and UCF in some ways are similar, even though I admit that they have been around much longer and
Hmm.
argue obviously that they accomplished a little bit more, especially with that CFP bid a couple years back. Um, but I was just intrigued by the matchup, and then going to Dallas. And never been. Well, actually, I was in Dallas for like a 10-minute or 15-minute layover once or whatever. But
Nice.
so I haven't really enjoyed Dallas. So being a new place, so a buddy of mine and I are linking up over there and gonna go watch us TCU, and I really think that that could be a really good tone setter as we enter conference play really early into the season.
Yeah, with that Gator game being, mid-season ish, like you start, it's kind of the Florida State thing. I'm really confused about. Like they start their year with two conference games. Like that's weird how that all got set up. But this again, that Gator game is the reason that's happening. But no, the logistics of that, honestly, that's something I never really thought about. It's like how easy is this place to get to, and so that makes sense to me. But when I look at like just other teams that like, and you mentioned too, some of the Big 12, it's like great college towns, but you don't really know what else there is to do. So like teams that would be cool to travel to just for the game atmosphere, like I look at like BYU's at home this year, but like BYU would be a great in-game experience. I think the best um, experience of the area and game experience combined on this schedule, if I was going to go to one, I would, if everything lined up, would be West Virginia. I think that's one of those just old school, like this is what college football is all about kind of places. So like if I had the choice this year, I would probably go with them.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. I think well, Morgantown. I think you have to fly into like Pittsburgh or something, and then
Yeah, probably.
something like that. But no, I agree. Like you can't deny that that West Virginia, while we low key might have some sort of rivalry brewing, because I see how, especially at the last game, some passionate fans between having some unique exchanges, and that's all I'll say about that. But West Virginia, they have a great rich college football tradition. They're the epitome. Morgantown is the epitome of a college football town, and so that would be a really unique experience if you have the patience to go through the travel arrangements to get there.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, they're not the easiest fan base to make friends with, and truth be told, neither are we. So, like, I respect it. And while they don't burn couches anymore, they do still have that mentality about themselves. So, like, as great as it would be, like, I don't know that I want to interact with like I would tailgate with anybody, but yeah, like once the game gets going and it gets heated, maybe not the best place to be if you're not wearing their colors. Which again, truth be told, that can be us too as well. But yeah, definitely up there. Arizona too. That's going to be a really interesting. That's at home. That's the space game this year. UCF 7-0 in their space games. This might be the biggest challenge we've had in the space game. We thought it was going to be Oklahoma State, but RJ Harvey said, "Nope, I got this. Don't worry about it, guys." So this might be, to me, this is the biggest challenge for the Citronauts, as it were. The one game a year that we're that one's going to be. I'm gonna be nervous for that one because we got that record. We want to stay undefeated in space games, and I'll fully say like that's if they're anywhere near as good as they were last year, that's going to be a dogfight.
Oh yeah, no, I agree, and I mean they have a lot of talent returning, yeah, despite the coaching change. So I think that Arizona, I mean, I'm not saying that they're going to make the conference championship game, but I wouldn't be surprised if they were like third, fourth, fifth position in the conference standings when it's all said and done, just because they have a lot of returning talent. Um, and well, I already have my Citronaut shirt and hat all ready to go for that game. I already picked that out.
There
but
we go.
I'm looking forward to the space game. I'll be at that one. And but Arizona, I believe that at least like in contention to make the conference championship game, that will be kind of like that crossroad of like, hey, like, chances are both of us are competing for it. So that game I think is going to mean a little bit more.
Right.
Of course, just the space game, which is of course important as well. And we're 7-0 in space games, so hopefully we can keep that tradition of winning during the space games alive. Um, I'm really excited to see that. Honestly, I look down up and down the schedule, and there's not a single matchup that I'm not like super excited about. I
Yeah.
mean, no disrespect to New Hampshire and Sam Houston State. Of course, I'm excited for any UCF game, but those other 10 games, like they're all great must see football for UCF fans.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm kind of the weird in this way. Like, I look forward to those early non-conference games, even if they're New Hampshire. Like, almost more in the sense that, again, no disrespect, that like I can go enjoy myself, not really going to be stressed out. Granted, I was there when we lost to Furman, so no game is guaranteed, but like you like to think you can go see your friends, see some people like yourself that you haven't seen in a while, right? So like I enjoy those games. Tickets are usually cheaper, so if you get a group together, it's easier to get everybody to go. So that's why like I almost always go to those early games and then try and pick and choose the other ones. Like everybody wants to go to Colorado, right? But the Colorado game, but like my friends try to go with me. Those tickets are skyrocket. I can't realistically expect them because I have season tickets. I can't realistically expect them to drop $200 on a ticket that I already have. So it's much easier to get the group to Sam Houston State, New Hampshire, that kind of stuff. So that's how I always look at it. And then it's important to note with like Arizona, Arizona State, Utah, which that's the last game of the year. That could be a big one as well, assuming they have a similar year to last year. They're the favorite, I'd say, to win the Big 12 this year if you had to pick out of everybody right now. But those teams will have it's a different transition than UCF had coming from the American. But even going from the Pac-12 to the Big 12, the style's different. There's going to be a bit of a transition there. So I'm curious out of those new, we were the new guy for a blink of an eye, and now there's other new guys coming in. We're no longer the new faces in the conference, even though it's only been year 2 for us. So I'm interested to see which one of those teams does the transition as flawlessly as possible and which ones really get tripped up by it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that Utah, like you were saying, like they're the favorite by most, professionals at ESPN and whatnot, to win the Big 12. Um, Arizona State, I think, has a little bit more of like an uphill climb compared to all of them. I think Colorado is going to at least make a bowl game this year. Um,
Mm.
and I haven't looked too deep at their schedule, but I have a feeling that they're going to at least, get this, a modest improvement from last year. Um, Arizona, I think they're going to be similar in terms of just kind of how I don't know what their conference schedule looks like, but I have a feeling they're going to perform at a similar level unless they just really trip up. But to answer your question as best I can, I think Arizona State really just has like the steepest
I
mountain,
agree. Yeah.
because I know that they've had some stuff going on with the program, but I'm sure within a few years and they have the right leadership, they're going to be clicking like they were not too long ago.
Yeah, not, and again, really not trying to pick on anybody, but Arizona State, Iowa State, I think are the two. The Iowa State's not a newbie, but like they're looking like they're going to be towards the bottom of it,
Yeah.
for sure. I agree with that 100%. So before we get out of here, let's give a Oh, and I was going to mention, you said Colorado might make a bowl game next year. One of the best parts about having a podcast, when you make a take and you're right, you have proof. So last year I picked them correctly to go exactly 4-8. So I haven't picked them this year quite yet. So maybe I need to do that. But I agree, it's hard to do worse than they did given all the hype that they had. So hopefully it's not against us. But I agree. I definitely see a bowl game. Maybe just at 6-6, but I could see them making that small adjustment for sure. So on our way out here, Blake, again, this has been a lot of fun. I'm really glad we got to work together. We had to work through some technical difficulties early on. You guys will notice the aspect ratio Blake had to change there for a minute, but I think we got it going. So we'll know for next time. Just a quick floor and ceiling. If you had to pick right now, UCF's win total for the year?
Ooh, so I'll start with the floor. The
Mm-hmm.
floor 6. I really think that like the worst case scenario is, God forbid, there's some injuries or something, that happens, or just a couple really close games that just don't go our way for whatever
Mm-hmm.
reason. Had a couple of those last year too. I think that's the floor. I do think we're going to go bowling this year, almost no matter what. Um, and I'd love to say that we're going to be a conference contender this year. I really think that the ceiling is 9 wins. I think we're going to trip up somewhere. I hope I'm wrong. I hope we go 12-0 or 11-1 or whatever. But my honest opinion is we are going to, best case scenario is going to be 9 wins. You could debate who those 9 wins are going to be. It's going to be Florida, Utah, Arizona, Colorado, TCU. Those all 5 games are all going to be tough for whatever reason. But the floor 6-6, the ceiling 9-3, and potentially in contention for squeezing into the Big 12 championship game.
We're pretty much right on the money. Like even looking last year, like we went 6-6, but you factored in that debacle against Baylor right in the second half. So to me, we were a 7-win team. So to me, that's my floor is 7. I basically have us going 9-3. Whatever bowl game we make could get us to that 10th win. That's kind of where, to me, that's the season that I'm hoping for. If you go 8-5 and win a bowl, like I'm happy with that too. Because maybe we're just old school college football fans, but going to any bowl and winning it still it means something to me. Like even in this new college football playoff world, like granted, there's some bowls you're going to be more hyped for than others. But even like last year, yes, we've been to the Gasparilla Bowl too many times lately. Still wanted to beat Georgia Tech. Still wanted to beat Duke in the Military Bowl. Haven't won a bowl game since that Gasparilla against the Gators. So that's something I'd like to be back on track. So what is my expectations this year? Go bowling, win a bowl. It's that simple. And that's, some people have better expectations, and I'm fine with that. Like I hope they blow mine out of the water. But that's where I'm at. Gus gets the bowl win. I don't see any scenario they would have to really trip up and just go off the tracks for Gus to be on any sort of hot seat. But even he's admitted, like, that was his first losing season as a head coach I think he's ever had last year, going 6-7 after that bowl loss. So he knows what's at stake. I think he knows the standard that he wants to coach his team to, and they didn't quite meet it last year. Could have easily a couple times, but didn't. So at the end of the day, I think between 7 and 9 is we're basically in the same pocket there. So I agree.
Yeah, no, and honestly, I do think that we're on the right trajectory. Just look, the recruiting speaking for itself, and
Yeah.
just the transfer portal. Gus has embraced the transfer portal, so I do believe we are a better than 6-win team. But I'm just always just naturally, I'm always thinking worst case scenario. But 9-3, I feel very confident that is very doable, and I hope I'm right. But if I'm wrong, I hope it's me wrong in a good way, where we win 10 or more during the regular season and we're playing at least in the conference championship game. Because at that point, if you're in the conference championship game, even if you lose that game, you're at least in the conversation for the CFP now that we're at 12 teams.
Right, that's true. And it's hard to not be pessimistic. I'm an Eagles fan, you're a Vikings fan. Any bad thing that's ever happened to a team, we've witnessed, if not with our Knights, with our pro teams for sure. So we're kind of on that same level there. Blake, this has been a blast, man. I really appreciate your time. Appreciate you working through these tech issues. And I will see you on Thursday, man. I can't wait. Go Knights.
Yeah, go Knights. Charge on. See you Thursday, man. Appreciate
All right,
you.
man. Thanks for listening, everybody. Enjoy college football because it's back. We'll see you next time.